and a lot of storylines. We'll start with BJ Penn, Ken Flo, and Yair Rodriguez, and hopefully this doesn't take too much shine off of what Yair Rodriguez was able to accomplish, because as you heard from me, I'm all in on the kid. But for BJ Penn, Kenny, idle since the summer of 2014. He comes back against a young, ranked guy with a bunch of speed and a lot of different weapons. And again, I don't know that we saw too much out of BJ Penn in terms of his own offense, but you were pretty clear on the post-fight show. You think it's time.
Yeah, and listen, he had retired already, and I think he just made the wrong choice. It's tough, man, because as a fighter, you're supposed to kind of have this belief in yourself. You have this innate ability to want to compete and test yourself, and BJ has always had that. He's fought in several weight classes and has done extremely well. But, the harsh reality in combat is that it will continue to evolve. And if you don't stay up with it, and if your body starts to break down, you're just going to be at a huge disadvantage. And when you fight a guy like Yair Rodriguez, who has so many weapons, and, obviously I talked about it a lot on this podcast, I wasn't sold on Yair until last night. He is the real deal. He is extremely dangerous. He was putting together his kicks in a manner that really made sense. He wasn't just winging kicks. He was doing it at the right time, and he was landing pretty much everything. He hurt BJ several times in that fight. BJ showed his heart once again, but it was just very, very hard to watch.
Well, and I think Yair Rodriguez, Kenny, heard some of that criticism. A lot of what he was saying during fight week was that he had rededicated himself to the fundamentals, just working on pure boxing and kickboxing fundamentals. And when fighters are young, and I would defer to you on all things mixed martial arts, but you can make major improvements in a 5 or 6 month window. And I think you're seeing Rodriguez fight to fight really making those adjustments. And he's such a plus athlete. I think he might be one of the 10 or 15 best athletes on the roster. And as he starts to put it all together and sort of grow into his body a little bit, I know there are tough matchups in this featherweight division, whether it's, Frankie Edgar, Mirsad Bektic types, but I really think Yair Rodriguez has the makings of a future number one contender, if not potentially a future UFC champion.
He definitely looked special last night, and that's great to hear. The fact that he went back to the fundamentals, that was something that I was calling for. Go back to the fundamentals. A guy like Alex Caceres would not have lasted more than 5 minutes against the Yair Rodriguez who fought last night. So there was vast improvements. I thought Yair proved himself to be an elite featherweight, no doubt about it. He's going to be a problem for a lot of guys. He's big, he's fast, he's athletic, continues to learn, continues to evolve as a martial artist. And he made BJ Penn look really bad. And it's tough because for BJ, you look at his last 4 fights. Actually, I guess even if we go before that, his last 5 fights, it was a draw against John Fitch. It was a brutal loss against Nick Diaz, another brutal loss against Rory McDonald, and then yet another brutal loss against Frankie Edgar. He had retired, and then he decided to come back. It was another brutal loss. I hope that he stays retired. And, people are silly, man. People were criticizing me and saying, what are you doing retiring BJ Penn? This is the guy that choked you out. Hey, dummies, I'm telling him he needs to stay retired. He should not be taking a beating. I picked BJ to win the fight, for Pete's sake. But more than anything else, I hate seeing a legend who gets passed by in this sport. I hate seeing a legend take a lot of damage like BJ Penn did. And it just continues to hurt his legacy. And this is a guy who will go down as one of the greatest of all time. We just didn't need to see it.
You have a better percentage picking fights than all of your Fox contemporaries, as much as the Daniel Cormier types don't want to hear it. But I will admit to being absolutely stunned that you picked BJ Penn last week. Yeah. And I almost stopped down the show I was really surprised. And then, of course,
is this Kenny?
Yeah. And then, of course, our guest picker did the same. But, I think it was partially a statement about what we thought we would get out of BJ Penn, who was in terrific shape. It certainly didn't result in anything for him. A lot of people have suggested if it was the Dennis Seaver fight that had been some, I like Cole Miller. I'm not sure if those fights really excite BJ Penn the way a fight against Yair Rodriguez would, because everything BJ was saying is he's trying to chase down this featherweight title, which sounds a little bit crazy here Monday morning quarterback, but I'm not sure that those fights, a Cole Miller type fight, would have had the same appeal for BJ Penn. And I don't know that it necessarily accomplishes much for BJ. His legacy is what it is, and nothing. Some people have suggested that he's tarnishing his legacy here. I don't necessarily see it that way. I mean, do you feel like he's tarnishing his legacy? I mean, this will certainly be part of the narrative, but to me, this is as beloved a fighter, in terms of appeal to fighters and fans collectively. I mean, this is it. He's as beloved as anyone's ever been.
I think that, when you look at the art in mixed martial arts, you're out there trying to express yourself, and you're out there trying to express the best part of yourself. And I think that BJ was able to do that when he was fighting at lightweight. That's when he was truly at his best. And I think that as an artist, if your performances start to decline, if you're not showing what you're truly capable of at a high level, you need to stop. That's my opinion. If you're out there to test yourself, then you should be testing yourself to become a champion. And I think that's kind of what was in BJ's head. And he said, here I have an opportunity to fight Rodriguez, a guy who is a big-time prospect, a guy who will probably fight for the belt in the near future. If I beat him, I can maybe go for that third title and possibly fight and win a third title in the UFC in a different division. And I think he had that in the back of his head. And as you mentioned, he wouldn't have got that opportunity if he beat a Cole Miller or a Dennis Seaver. And I think that's what was in the back of his mind. And now we have the answer. He isn't able to pursue that. He wasn't able to beat Rodriguez at his best. And, it's just time to retire. He found out, and hopefully stays retired, because I don't want to see him take that damage. He doesn't deserve that. And the reason why I don't like seeing that is because a legend like BJ Penn, a tremendous fighter, tremendous mixed martial artist, he doesn't need to be taking that damage for us. He already has given us a lot of great fights, a lot of great performances. He's expressed himself so many times in beautiful ways in fights. His time has passed, and that's it. He's just got to let the other younger guys compete.
We very much wanted to interview BJ Penn in the Octagon. He wasn't having it. I don't believe he said anything after the fact. I am of the belief that BJ Penn does not want to go out like this. He doesn't really know any other way. And I know you had to deal with some certain things mentally when you retired. Obviously, your back sort of, expedited things a little bit. But I think he's going to want to fight again, whether it's a Cole Miller type. I mean, do you think that BJ Penn, on the heels of this result, is going to take the advice that he's hearing, I would think, from a lot of people internally to walk away? Or do you think he's going to try to have that one seminal moment and go out on a win against somebody who is more beatable than Yair fucking Rodriguez?
Right. I mean, listen, it was a tough fight. There's no doubt about it. Woodley pointed that out last night, that it was probably the wrong matchup, and he's not sure if BJ should retire. But I think he should retire. I mean, you want to show your best self. BJ Penn has already shown that. I don't think we're going to see the best BJ Penn moving forward. So why should we see it? That's just my opinion. I think that, yes, I'm sure BJ is looking for that one fight, but then what does it prove? What does it prove besides going out on a win? It's a good thing to feel good about your ego, but I think for a fighter, you're either fighting for the championship or you're not. Or if you need to make money, I get that too. BJ Penn doesn't need money as far as I know.
And I know for you, that's always what it was about. You didn't just want to hang around for the payday. And even when you and I have talked in the last 2 or 3 years, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but about you potentially coming back for a fight, you don't want to come back and fight one of the bottom feeders on the roster. I know you. You want to come back and fight a guy in the top 10, even if you've had a layoff of 4 or 5 years. So when BJ goes back to the stool after round 1, and I think remarkable that he got through that first round. I mean, the outcome at that point is an eventuality. He got nothing done offensively in the first round. My favorite corner man in UFC history, a guy by the name of Keith Florian, suggested that after, I don't know if you saw this from your brother, but after round 1, he said, I'm not even sure I would have let him get off the stool for round 2. I might have thrown in the towel. And I think a lot of people on the thread agreed with him. I think there is an argument to be made that if you're a corner man, and BJ obviously would have gone nuts and not accepted that fate, but man, it just seemed to me like there was nothing good that was going to happen in that second round.
Yeah, I think Keith makes a strong argument, and I totally get that. I think that if you've been around BJ Penn, you've been close to him, the one thing he probably said is do not stop the fight. But as a corner, that's not – your job isn't to make the fighter feel good. Your job is to keep the fighter safe, and to keep the fighter, give him an opportunity to win, but also keep him safe. And I think that heading into that second round, I think it was inevitable that it was going to take a lot of damage. That's what Yair did. Hated seeing it, and I think Keith made a great point there.
So over the last 18 months, they've been filming a documentary on Yair Rodriguez called El Pantera. I think they're trying to get it at the Tribeca Film Festival potentially in April, but it's just amazing how his career has progressed while he has been being followed. And there's some amazing clips that they've sent me privately to see, and I just think that this could be a real star for the UFC, the Mexican phenom Yair Rodriguez. And I think a lot of people think right now, and Kelvin Gastelum, I think, is right. I mean, I think Gastelum, after what he did to Tim Kennedy, certainly has the chops to be a UFC champion as well. But Yair Rodriguez is a star. He's the total package. He's self-aware. He's sensible. He's on the mic very effectively as well. His English is getting better by the day. I mean, when you look at this top 10, Kenny, it's going to be really interesting and a nice challenge and a fun challenge, I would think, for Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard to match make Yair Rodriguez now going forward. Any name on the tip of your tongue? I mean, I know you don't have the top 10 in front of you. I mean, maybe a Frankie Edgar fight makes sense. Is that too soon? What do you think?
I mean, yeah, I think eventually it definitely makes sense. I'm not sure if he's ready for Frankie yet. He just might be. I mean, I think he's that talented. He's that good. He's that fast. I think that maybe a fight that makes a little bit more sense might be like a Dennis Bermudez, maybe the winner of Bermudez and Korean Zombie.
Ooh, I
think that would be pretty cool. Charles Oliveira, Ryan Hall. But I think that
look at the plug for 50-50 jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. But I think Yair is very close to that title shot. I think another 2 or 3 fights, and we could be seeing it. I think one thing that would be huge, and I really doubt if Conor McGregor will ever make 145, but Conor McGregor, Yair Rodriguez, do it in Mexico in a big stadium. Wow. That would be pretty insane.
Interesting.
You got the Irish fans, I get the Mexican fans, 2 of the most passionate fan bases in the world. I get chills thinking about that one.
All right, well, the final thing I'll say on Yair Rodriguez, I think there are 2 schools of thought right now. He's either ready for anyone in the division or he's not quite ready. And, hey, it's just one man's opinion, right? The promoter cuts my check, but I do believe, even more so, recognizing fully what type of opposition BJ Penn is in 2017, that Yair Rodriguez is ready to take his shots at this division's elite, and hopefully he gets, a top 7 guy, at least in my opinion, coming up next. All right, co-main event. One of your former victims, Joe Lozon against Marcin Held, split decision Lozon. I can't ever recall a winning fighter, basically giving the win to his opponent. But you know Joe well, and you know he is nothing if not classy. I thought Marcin Held really acquitted himself quite well, responded well to what was a really bad loss to Diego Sanchez at Altitude back in November, and unfortunately for the poll, he does not have a W to show for it.
How cool is Joe Lozon, by the way? How classy. I mean, I've like I said, like you said, I've never heard anything like that. I think that Joe was being very real in his assessment of the fight. He was very disappointed. But I think he had it right. I think it's a lot closer than he thought the fight was. I think it was a very close fight. I thought Held was going to get the decision, don't get me wrong. But it was a very close fight. I think he was a little frustrated on the ground that he was getting taken down, outpositioned there by Held. But I thought it was a close fight overall. I thought it was a nice performance. I thought the first round was definitely Lozon's. I think the second was edged out by Held, and the third was Marcin Held's round as well. But it was a fun fight. Those guys really brought it. Very, very entertaining, and it was really special to see Lozon keep it that real.
It's crazy what Joe Lozon has been able to accomplish. No lightweight in the history of the promotion has more stoppage wins than Joe Lozon. And I'm not sure he's ever been in the top 15. He's not in the top 15 right now. Maybe he got there at one point in time. But, I mean, that's a $60,000 swing for him, right? Win-lose. I mean, 60 to show, 60 to win. And I know he felt like he really beat Jim Miller, as a lot of people did, and he was on the wrong end of that equation. So in talking to Steve Mays and some of Lozon's cornermen after the fight, I mean, they didn't necessarily think he won the fight, but goddamn right they'll take it. So Joe Lozon, a winner over Marcin Held, and he said he's going to fight hard to make sure that the promotion doesn't cut Marcin Held, and certainly after what we saw last night, I do not think they will. Also on the main card, Kenny, Ben Saunders, a win over Court McGee. I thought McGee really finished the final 7 or 8 minutes strong, but the decision unanimously goes to Ben Saunders there. And I know you were impressed with Sergio Pettis against the former world title challenger John Moraga. Sergio by unanimous decision, and sort of a little bit under the radar now. Sergio Pettis 6-2 in the UFC.
Well, listen, he has arrived. I think he officially arrived last night. I think he showed that he is now finally comfortable fighting in the octagon. He was very fluid. He was relaxed. He was composed. He showed heart. I thought Moraga hit him with some big shots, but most of the time it was just Pettis really just schooling John Moraga, making it look easy. His movement was just beautiful. His ability to find his range and be creative was just a lot of fun to watch. And I tell you what, Sergio's going to be a handful for any flyweight out there. Woodley was saying that when they work out, that Pettis uses the same amount of weight that Woodley does. He said he was freakishly strong, finally kind of showed his power as well in this fight, and just showed that he has a very high MMA IQ as well. His decision-making was really on point.
Yeah, he's got a good chin, too. Doesn't always need to use it, but very interested to see where Sergio Pettis goes from here. Obviously, a lot of big fights for him at 125 pounds, and I would assume when the new rankings come out, I think on UFC Tonight on Wednesday,